Well, it's been a minute since I've, it's not been a minute at all. This is now on the regular. I'm absolutely desperate for some festival news, but until we get to that point, I'm just gonna talk about music that's happened this year. And to cut a long, weird, boring story about organisation short, I had to learn to use better software this year to really help me kind of organise WTF Series 1. Because organising that mammoth amount of tasks just requires something more than just like notes or a spreadsheet. So at the same time of doing that, I created a database of all of the albums that I wanted to go out of my way to listen to. And I put how many times I'd listened to them. And nicely enough, there are 10 albums that I listened to more than 5 times this year. And I thought it would be just a really good idea to go through some of those albums between now and the end of the year. So we've got 10 days, and we're not going to get any festival announcements in that time that I think of anyway. And we could talk about like a bit of an album review for each one of them. I already actually started toying with this as an idea when I did the Bring Me the Horizon album review. My opinions on that album have pretty much stayed the same. I think they're brilliant. So we can say that that's the first one of the 10, because that fits in there. And I thought we could just do a video every day talking about other albums that I absolutely love this year. And today I want to talk about Everything Not Saved Will Be Lost Part 1. The 5th entry in the catalogue by the Oxford-based Foals. You know, Foals for me have always been one of my favourite bands. I really started discovering them. It was actually on their 3rd album that I really started to pay more attention. And I think that came out in 2013 and was my album of the year. So anytime that they release something new, I get incredibly excited. I've since gone back and checked out their back catalogue as well. And I'm completely obsessed with their old stuff. They've gone on to headline Reading and Leeds, which is really exciting. And this year, playing the secret set at Glastonbury, they're an exciting band and always have been. They've always put music out of incredibly high calibre. They're a band that don't muck around. They've changed their sound quite dramatically over the years. They've gone from the Klaxons, Cassius, era, which is kind of like indie disco, and moved into this and kind of led the way as well for this kind of indie rock and roll sound that's a little bit more heavier and edgier over the last few years. I include people like the Arctic Monkeys, the Amazons, Royal Blood, these people that are just that little bit more than just like indie disco, and it's about big riffs and big sounds. This is their 5th album, and it was a 2-parter. We'll talk about part 2 in a different video because it deserves its own one. When I heard that they were releasing a 2-parter, I was incredibly excited. You know, like I said, everything they've put out's for a high caliber. I don't think they've ever put a record out I didn't love. Every one of their singles is brilliant. They do a lot of great remixes. This time they have lost a band member, so they've gone from a 5-piece to a 4-piece, and have opted for Yannis, the lead singer, to produce the album as well. Part 1 is, it harbours back to their more indie disco roots. Kind of a bit more funky. If you like tracks like My Number or Cassius, this album is for you. Part 2 is a bit heavier, so if things like Inhaler, the song Inhaler, not the band Inhaler, the kind of bigger numbers, What Went Down, that kind of thing, if that's your thing, Part 2 is definitely for you. It's a lot more epic and cinematic as well. So let's go through track by track and talk about what's what. You know, this album in particular is one that I just absolutely adore. So I'm pretty excited to be talking about it. And before we go into it, like, the album artwork is just brilliant. I just love it. I don't know where that tree is, or if it's been colour corrected to make it look that pink, but it's great. I love it. We start with the track Moonlight, which has this real classic, epic, cinematic feel to it. It starts with like this wonderful slow guitar, and then the intro to Yannis's vocals in that way that only he does. In previous albums, we've had much bigger records open it just to kind of lead the way as to where they're going. This one's a bit slower, a bit more epic and cinematic, but I think it works really well. It also has, you can tell that Yannis is trying to prove himself as a producer. There's a lot more synthesis in this. It's a little kind of craft worky, a bit digitalism-y. Klaxons-y is probably a nice way to put it without being overtly ravey. It still has this kind of, I don't know, what do you call it? Kind of art house? There's a specific word. But regardless, is this wonderful kind of start to this record, and, you know, one that I'm a big fan of. We then go into the track Exits, which is the first track of all of this that we heard. When I first heard this track, it has this kind of bizarre little intro, and when Annie Mac first played it, I thought that she had played the wrong song. And then it cuts into this record, which has this wonderful little synth going through it, really groovy, like, guitar line, synth line, has a guitar that kind of reminds me of things like My Number, that kind of high-end, picky thing that Foals have done classically very, very well. I mean, I hear this record, it takes me straight back to walking around Brisbane just after I got the job that I had there for a while. We won't talk about that. But Exits is a great record. I absolutely love it. It's a song that I'm excited to see them play live and sing along with. It also makes me think like it's a record that should have been used as an Apple advert in like the mid 2005. 2005 to like 2009, you had this amazing ad campaign they did for iTunes where they had lots of people dancing with, which was silhouettes, but they had that white, I mean, it would look very different now because we were these, but it had like the white cable, back when no other headphones had white cables. Such an effective piece of marketing. They would have absolutely used a record like this. Absolutely. Yeah, Exits is a great record. It's one that I'm a big fan of on this album. I think it's absolutely great. The only thing is, in the kind of halfway point where it does the breakdown, has a little drum fill that would allude to like a double time. And this is just kind of more a technicality thing. I think that would have been really cool if it would have really broken into something. Also, it lends itself to the possibility of really rocking it up. When I first started doing Music Club, I started one of the first songs was The Way You Used to Do by Queens of the Stone Age, which is this really cool, dancey, Mark Ronson-esque Queens of the Stone Age track, but I thought it would have been really good if it just do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That would have been amazing. This has the same thing. I feel like it goes ding, 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 and it could just be like dun, 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 dun. It would have been cool. Perhaps they'll do that live. Who knows? We'll see. Track 3, White Onions, is absolutely one of my records of the year. Great drum beat. Love, love, love the break in this. Much faster. Quite rocky. I mean, this isn't that funky. This doesn't belong on that kind of groove, indie, cindy, disco thing that they alluded to. This would have fit much better on the second album, I think. Probably my favourite track on the album, this. And it's got that wonderful bass line at the start, the distorted bass, with that rolling kind of synth line. I don't know if it's synth or a guitar, actually. It's great. I just love this. I think it's great. I could absolutely see the pits going mad for this. Absolutely mad. Track 4, we go to In Degrees, which definitely, if this is supposed to be their kind of dancier indie album, In Degrees is an anthem for that. Obviously, Purple Disco Machine went and did an amazing remix of it, which worked really, really well. This feels like Foals and Yanis is used to DJing and wanted to make a record that was DJ friendly, and I think it works really, really, really well. This is such classic Foals. It's got that high guitar thing in it. Ah, brilliant. I love this record so much. Track 5 is Syrups, which has this kind of almost dub influence. Certainly there's a bit of a dub reggae influence on the drums. Some of the synths that are going on in the background remind me of kind of mid to late noughties, like drum and bass. It reminds me of like Take Me Away by Chase and Status, and has this real King Tubby drum delay on it, which I think works really well. Then this wicked bluesy guitar certainly doesn't fit in with the rest of what they've been making over the last couple of years, but I think it still has that cinematic feel that I think they've always done quite well. This feels like it could have been a nice addition to Holy Fire. Like tracks like Providence and Late Night, this would have fit quite nicely into that. So maybe, I don't know. Syrup is a good one. Every so often I just go and find that record because I quite like how different it is for them. Next we get On the Luna, which is by far Lauren's favourite song by Foals of the Year. The most bizarre time signature in a record. Try dancing to this, it's well hard. It's like a waltz, but not. Yanis is kind of doing his best Bryan Adams impression with this. It's quite different, but I think sounds absolutely great, you know. But just the most peculiar time signature. So daring. And to put this out as a second single, I think that says a lot about what they were intending to do. You know, this has to be one that they go down well live. It has to go down well live. So hopefully we'll see them at either Glastonbury or Reading this year and we can watch it. But yeah, On the Luna, great chorus. Just make sure to air guitar and drum and get confused while you're doing all of it. I think it's absolutely great. And that synth halfway through it, it's like, I call it the subtrack synth. Anyone that knows synthesis, if you can explain to me how you make that sound of synth, I'd be well happy, because I've never been able to work it out. I'm sure there's a name for it. If there is, and you can send me a tutorial, that'd be great. Might start making music again. We then move into Cafe Athens, which, going back to that kind of same thing of syrups and in degrees, I feel like this is Yannis trying to make something a bit more quirky and awkward. Bit of a strange, like the drum beat is one of those amazing kind of loops. It's very Kate Trinada-esque. It's just a bit kind of loose and has a lot of swing to it. Sorry for all the beeps. I'm recording this in a car park in my car because it's the only time I get some peace. So everyone's walking past, putting their walking boots on and going, what the fuck is that guy doing? Just chatting to a camera. There's lots of cute dogs though. So Cafe Athens has this really great, like, marimba, which refuses to follow like a fun and safe time signature. It's not in a 4/4, it's still in a 4/4. It's just that some of the beats are a bit late, so if you were trying to like drum along with it, it would be pretty complicated, unless you're a drummer, in which case you'd probably quite enjoy the challenge. But Cafe Athens, certainly one of its more melodic tracks as an album, but you know, still, you know, I think this album is just a great display of Yannis as a producer. I think this is amazing. I really like this track. I think it works perfectly. I don't think it's going to be something they're going to add to their live roster. Could be wrong, but feels like it would be a fun one that they would DJ maybe. I don't know, like, Foals are one of those bands, aren't they? They're pretty diverse. But a track that is great nonetheless, and is exactly why this is in my album of the year. I thought that we would have more records like Surf Part 1 on here. I thought that as they're releasing a two-parter, there would be different records that kind of go between the two. Like there's a Part 1 and a Part 2, or a Part 2 and then a Part 1, or something that would allude to and kind of motifs that would allude to other different parts in the next album as it came out. It looks like this is the main one. And is it Into the Surf on Part 2? Obviously we will go into way more depth when we talk about Part 2, but Into the Surf is definitely one of those records that I like a lot on the other album. But it's just it's sort of like a bit of an album filler track. I just would have liked some more reprises or something that would have changed that. Maybe an X6 reprise would have worked really well, but we'll talk about that when we jump into. Next track is Sunday, which was the third single they released. I first played this to my girlfriend, who was not that impressed by it as a record. It's a bit slow. It feels like an album ender, and that's okay. However, when it gets to about 3 minutes maybe, it kind of gets really epic. It sounds a bit like a Coldplay kind of record. Then it kind of goes into a breakdown and reprises itself, and changes its drum pattern. Becomes a bit more dancing, a bit more groovy. This is one of those kind of records that they do live. They make you hold on to it. I can literally picture this at Glastonbury right now. I can picture this so much as a record that just has a lot of bounce in a live set. I just see it working really, really, really well. And then obviously when it breaks, it then kind of goes back into the same thing as it was before, but by this point it's a lot more epic, and Yannis has his classic screams and stuff on it, and it's great. I think this would have been an amazing album ender. They finish with the record I'm Done With The World and It's Done With Me, which is a bit more kind of ballady, pretty simple kind of piano ballad. Probably, as styles of music go, piano ballads are my least favourite, but I think this is kind of adds to that cinematic feel that this album has. This could have been nicer maybe in the middle of the album rather than at the end, because I just feel like Sunday would have ended the album on a really high note and that would have been fine. I think this is a bad choice. It's not my favourite song. And, you know, in terms of the electronic experimentation, I think this does a great job. And as a whole, this album is just wonderful. There are records on here that I will go back and listen to for all of time. I think it's just a magnificent, magnificent album. One that they should be really proud of as a band to have put out. And then we know there's a second part coming, and that is so exciting. What do you think about Everything Not Saved Part 1? It's, you know, I love Foals so much. I love them, and to have them back is great. I think that there's probably an argument there to say that they've put quite a lot of music out, and I think maybe that's a bit more obvious on the second part, which we'll talk about in another video. But I think it's a wonderful choice, and it's a great addition to the kind of live arsenal that they have. The question then goes, what do you cut out of your set to make way for these records? for 2 albums as well. I'd love to know your highlights on this. Have you checked any other Foals out before? What's your opinion on this compared to old stuff? Do you prefer part 1 or part 2? You know, those kind of questions. So let's have a conversation about it in the comment section below. We have another 8 albums to record, which I will be going over the next few days. Tomorrow, I'm not sure what we'll tackle. I'm literally recording this today, and I've got like 10% battery on my camera, so I need to go and charge it. Note to self, bring cable and charger when you are trying to record a video. Anyway, have yourself a lovely evening, and what other albums did you like this year? I'm loving this conversation. I'm interested to see what else falls in my top 10. Anyway, take it easy. Bye.